What started as a seemingly routine tariff announcement has spiraled into one of the most dangerous trade standoffs of Trump's second term. The players couldn't be more different. The United States, the world's biggest consumer market, and Switzerland, a small, landlocked country best known for watches, chocolate, and neutrality. But beneath that calm surface lies Switzerland's greatest power, its pharmaceutical industry, an industry now thrust into the center of a geopolitical storm. Here's the spark. In August 2025, the Trump administration imposed a sweeping 39% tariff on Swiss imports, citing what it called an unfair trade imbalance. The move stunned Swiss leaders, who pointed out that Switzerland already maintains some of the lowest industrial tariffs in the world. Trump didn't care. For him, it was about optics, leverage, and the ability to claim another win in his escalating trade wars. The impact was immediate. Swiss exports to the US plummeted by 22% in a single month. Luxury watches stalled in ports. Machinery orders dried up. Even chocolate, that harmless icon of Swiss culture, faced new barriers. But one sector had been spared: pharmaceuticals. The exemption made sense. Cutting off life-saving drugs is political suicide. Yet just weeks later, a USS Section 232 investigation put Pharma right back on the chopping block. Analysts now warn that tariffs on Swiss medicines could rise as high as 250%. And if that happens, the consequences will be catastrophic. Why? Because Switzerland isn't just another drug exporter. It is the backbone of global pharma. Together, giants like Roche and Novartis supply treatments that touch almost every area of medicine: cancer, autoimmune diseases, vaccines, cutting-edge biologics. The US alone imports more than $41 billion worth of Swiss pharmaceuticals each year. These aren't luxury goods you can swap for cheaper substitutes. They are specialized, patented therapies that patients depend on daily. Raise prices by 250%, and the shockwaves won't just hit corporate balance sheets. They'll land in pharmacies, hospitals, and households across America. Switzerland knows what's at stake. President Karen Keller-Sutter personally flew to Washington, meeting with U.S. officials and warning that tariffs of this scale would not only wreck Swiss industry but endanger global health. Her words were backed by action. Swiss business groups condemned the tariffs as harmful and unjustified. Roche announced a $50 billion US investment to build more manufacturing plants on American soil, a clear signal: if Washington wants drugs made in America, they'll deliver, but at enormous cost. Novartis, meanwhile, began stockpiling medicines and accelerating local production. For companies used to running lean, efficient supply chains, these moves reveal just how serious the threat has become. Behind the headlines, though, lies a more human story. Imagine a cancer patient in Texas who relies on a Roche immunotherapy drug produced in Switzerland. If tariffs hit, the cost skyrockets. Insurers pass on higher premiums. Hospitals ration supplies. Patients face longer waits, higher bills, or outright shortages. For families already drowning in medical debt, this isn't a trade war, it's a health crisis. Advocacy groups are sounding the alarm, warning that lives could literally be lost if politics interrupts supply chains. Trump, as always, sees it differently. At rallies, he frames the tariffs as a victory for American sovereignty. No more free rides, he declares, painting Switzerland as yet another country taking advantage of the US. He points to Roche's massive US investment as proof that his strategy works. To his supporters, it's simple: tariffs bring jobs home. But experts argue it's not that simple. Pharmaceutical supply chains are complex, regulated, and global. You can't uproot decades of R&D, factory expertise, and regulatory approvals overnight. And by forcing companies to rush production shifts, Trump may actually increase risks and costs long-term. This clash is also part of a broader pattern. Over the past year, Trump has reignited trade wars across the globe. He slapped 50% tariffs on India, sparking one of the sharpest diplomatic crises in decades. In Europe, consumers launched boycotts of US goods after tariffs triggered retaliation. In the Caribbean, Trump staged a controversial naval strike against a Venezuelan vessel, framing it as a fight against cartels but drawing criticism for militarizing trade disputes. And in the Middle East, his decision to support Israel's strike on Qatar threw ceasefire negotiations into chaos, angering allies and fueling instability. Each move underscores the same message: Trump uses confrontation as leverage, no matter the fallout. For Switzerland, however, this fight cuts especially deep. Pharma isn't just one industry among many. It's the pillar of its economy. Nearly half of Switzerland's exports are pharmaceuticals. Without them, the country faces job losses, reduced GDP, and diminished global influence. Already, smaller industries like watches and machinery are feeling the squeeze from the August tariffs. If pharma falls, Switzerland risks an economic downturn unlike anything in recent memory. The Swiss public is watching nervously. On the streets of Zurich and Basel, citizens worry about the future. Newspapers warn of a trade war on health. Politicians are under pressure to strike back, perhaps by tightening regulations on U.S. companies operating in Europe. Diplomats are exploring closer ties with the EU and Asia to offset U.S. hostility. For a country famous for neutrality, Switzerland suddenly finds itself at the center of geopolitical turbulence. Meanwhile, the global reaction grows louder. The UN Trade Council expressed grave concern over the potential disruption of medicine supplies. The World Health Organization weighed in, cautioning that tariffs on pharmaceuticals during a fragile global health recovery could set dangerous precedents. European leaders blasted Trump's strategy as reckless, accusing him of holding patients hostage for political gain. Even within the US, hospitals and patient groups are speaking out, warning that higher drug prices could devastate vulnerable communities. Markets are responding too. Swiss stocks tied to exports have tumbled. Pharma investors are jittery, fearing regulatory uncertainty. US healthcare companies, dependent on stable drug pricing, are bracing for volatility. And across Wall Street, analysts warn that this trade war could become a flashpoint that shakes global markets in the months ahead. There's also a historical echo here. Tariffs have been used as bargaining chips before, but rarely on something as essential as medicine. Economists recall the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of the 1930s, which deepened the Great Depression by strangling trade. Today's situation is different, but the principle is the same. When countries weaponize essential goods, everyone loses. In this case, the everyone includes cancer patients, diabetics, and families counting on affordable prescriptions. The irony is that both sides have valid leverage. Trump can argue that America deserves more local investment. Switzerland can argue that disrupting pharma harms not just trade, but humanity. And so far, neither side seems willing to blink. That's what makes this moment so dangerous. If tariffs on pharma actually take effect, the fallout will be immediate and painful. Drug prices in the US will spike. Swiss exports will collapse. Global supply chains will seize up, and trust between two long-standing allies will fracture. And yet, there may still be a path forward. Negotiators are quietly exploring compromises. One option, exempting critical medicines while taxing non-essential products. Another, phasing in local production over years rather than months. But Trump's track record suggests compromise isn't his favorite play. He thrives on drama, on headlines, on the image of toughness. For Switzerland, the challenge is to defend its interests without escalating further. For the world, the hope is that cooler heads prevail before patients pay the price. So where does this leave us? Right now, in limbo. The Section 232 investigation continues. Swiss leaders lobby. Pharma giants build factories and stockpile drugs. Patients hold their breath, and the world watches as two very different nations, one a global superpower, the other a pharma powerhouse, battle over medicine. One thing is clear: the $40 billion at stake isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's prescriptions, treatments, and lives. And in a world still recovering from crises of health and trust, this trade war feels less like a policy dispute and more like a gamble with humanity's well-being. Trump may rage, Switzerland may slap back, but the rest of us are left with the same question: when medicine becomes a weapon, who really wins?